Good morning. Good morning, Facebook. Dr. Rose here live with another Transformation Tuesday. Transformation Tuesday. Just finished broadcasting on Periscope. Went a little longer than expected because things got a little heated on there. But that's what I like, I like to ruffle some feathers sometimes so can force people to think things differently especially when it comes to this topic, because May, as I've come to you the last few weeks, have explained is Mental Health Awareness Month. I'm wearing my green for Mental Health Awareness Month. And today's topic is very relevant and it's something that needs to be had and discussed. 5 common parenting mistakes that could affect the mental health of your child. Now, one thing I think we all can agree on is that every parent desires their children to be well adjusted, to be confident, to be secure, so they can go out in the world and feel all those things, confidence and security. However, many of us inadvertently do things or have parenting practices that we don't realize are detrimental to a child's well adjustment, to their confidence, to their well-being. And oftentimes it's because a lot of these practices are practices that's just been passed down generation after generation. And for a lot of us, it's so much easier for us to do things the way they've always been done than to challenge them and come up with new ways of doing it. In psychology, we call that being a cognitive miser. So much easier for us to just do things as they've always been done because it doesn't require a lot of effort. But this call, if nothing else, I want to challenge you guys to start putting a little bit more thought and challenging a lot of those norms that we had as parents, that our parents had, that our grandparents had. Challenging a lot of these norms that may not be so conducive to our well-being, and to go out in the world and just do the best that we can do without having to deal with the unhealthy effects of parenting that was done, inadvertently, like I said, but nonetheless had its effect. So I want to get started right away because one of the things I want to share with you guys is that, and this is hard for a lot of people to understand, is that we all have experienced psychological and emotional trauma and damage from our childhood. Doesn't matter if you had the best, I don't care how well adjusted your parents were. Oftentimes when people hear this, they think about the more serious traumas, like your sexual or physical abuse, or, being raised by a parent with substance abuse issues or things of that sort. But even those of us who may have had parents with none of these issues, we still have experience some type of psychological or emotional effects and damage from parenting, because parenting doesn't come with a manual. And if people are just doing things the way they've always been done by their parents and their grandparents, inevitably there's going to be some slip-ups there that's going to affect the emotional well-being of their children. So let's talk about some of these things. Let's talk about some of the common parenting mistakes that we may be making that we can change today. We can start and make an effort, conscious, deliberate effort today to say we're going to change that. Number 1 is not allowing your child to own their individuality. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by not allowing your child to own their own individuality? Everybody has their own unique personality. And one of the hardest things for some parents to understand is that their child is not just a miniature version of them. They're going to have different perspectives, belief systems. I oftentimes get parents who bring their children in and say, fix my child. But the problem is the child isn't broken. All of our children come into this world with the specific traits, characteristics, and attributes that they need already inherent within them to go out there and fulfill their destiny, to go and walk in their purpose. But all too often, parents inadvertently, they think it's for the best, but they try to talk that child out of being their authentic self. And one of my favorite quotes is, to thine own self be true. So the majority of the patients that come and see me are individuals. And when I say the majority, I'm talking 85-90% are people who are going about life. They're working their jobs, but they are feeling so disconnected because so early on in life, they were told they were too much of something. You were too sensitive, or you were too curious or inquisitive, or you were too quiet, or you were too loud. And what a lot of parents don't understand, that too is what was needed for that child to just walk in their purpose and their destiny. It's what's going to really shape them. So I want to just really implore all of the parents out there and share this with your friends and family that our job is not to change our children. There's a book called The Prophet, classic book, and there's something, I'm going to paraphrase, it says our children come through us, but they're not of us. I did an article not too long ago about entitled Not My Mini Me, discussing why I no longer will ever refer to my daughters as my mini me, because that minimizes their individuality, and they need to be able to own their individuality to live authentic, happy, connected lives. So number two, we're going to go to number two, and I hope you guys can share this information on your timelines as well, because I think it's very valid and needed. Number two, another mistake is shutting down a child's voice. How many times have you heard, or you even said yourself, children are meant to be seen, not heard. Children are meant to be seen, not heard. Now, what's the problem with that? The problem is that we have to start early on. Like as adults, one of the biggest, I say adults now who can't even own their voice. They don't even acknowledge or validate themselves. And oftentimes that's because they were raised in an environment, a home environment, which is supposed to be the safe environment where you practice, owning your voice and advocating for yourself, where they were shut down the minute they did that. So there exists now as adults a lack of confidence to go out there into the world and advocate for themselves in appropriate ways, not in very, aggressive ways, but there are ways to do it that can be very appropriate and very effective. But you learn that as a child. You learn that as a child whose voice, opinions are valued by their caregivers, not minimized, not told that they are irrelevant. So if you want your child to grow up to be confident and connected and be able to advocate for themselves, stop with this belief that they are meant to be seen and not heard. This is the time where they learn the appropriate skills necessary to go out there in the world and just be the best them that they could possibly be. The third thing, this is going to ruffle some feathers. I was on Periscope earlier today, and boy, this ruffles some feathers, but I'm going to put it up there. Whoopings, whippings, spankings, whatever they're called. We all have different terms from it, but how many times have you heard the saying, spare the rod, spoil the child? You will even see people on social media, and I've seen it, sharing statuses like, that's what's wrong with these kids today. And, my parents whooped me and I turned out all right. I'm going to tell you, as a clinical psychologist, looking and seeing a lot of these people who want to assert that if you talk to their significant others and their spouses and the people close to them, they really didn't turn out all that right. They have a lot of issues. They're defensive. They're angry. They have a strong inability to be vulnerable and to really connect with others oftentimes, because if you are beaten by the person who's supposed to love you the most, that doesn't make sense for a child. That doesn't compute. I'm going to do this because I love you. I say that beatings, whoopings, whippings, spankings, whatever you want to call it, it's a lazy way of enforcing discipline. And I went back to talking about how we're all cognitive misers and we have to start challenging ourselves to think more effectively and just think more creatively, because it's a child's job to screw up. It's a parent's job to enforce consequences for that. But the consequences should not be a form of discipline that was imposed upon us by our captors to break our spirit. Now, if your job as a parent is someone who wants to break your child's spirit, to teach them to become very defensive, on alert all the time, that fight or flight syndrome, the inability to be vulnerable around their significant others when they grow up, then continue with the beatings. And oh my God. And then I hear stories of the beatings where you tell your child to take off all your clothes, I'm going to beat you. What do you think that's doing to that child's, even their healthy development, even in a sexual way, when they're in their most vulnerable state and they're being broken, their spirit's being broken? So it's time to challenge that belief system and consider the origins of it. Consider the origins of what this mentality of beating your child and really just breaking their spirit comes from, because we know where the origins come from, but it's foolish for us to continue this practice. It's foolish. It's foolish. So, number 4, expecting a level of maturity that is far beyond a child's developmental state. And I put in quotes belief that how many times have you heard people say this is mama's little man? Your child's job is to be a child, not your surrogate spouse or partner. They should not be expected to behave like adults. That's like telling a 6-month-old that they should be walking by now. Their brain has not yet got to the level of development that's going to allow that connection to their muscles to tell them to get up and move them in an appropriate way that will allow them to walk. That's the same as expecting an 8-year-old to behave like an adult or to show just adult type features or behaviors that is far beyond where they are developmentally. So I tell parents all the time, parents will come in and they'll complain, my child isn't appreciative enough. My child isn't, they're keeping their room dirty all the time. Things of that sort that you're causing yourself so much undue stress because developmentally, this is where a child is right now. There are appropriate stages that children must go through. And oftentimes parents can really thwart that effective movement through that stage by not allowing a child to be a child. So I beg of you guys, if you're doing this to your children or people doing this, share this video with them. Get my book, Bloom 7 Steps of Personal Transformation. I talk about these stages and the effects, the negative effects, psychological and emotional effects that when we don't give the children what they need during these developmental stages, the effect it has on us. So a quick example I want to use. So you have a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old who's in this stage of initiative. They want to show initiative. I can tie my own shoes. I can pour my mom's cereal. I can get the groceries out the car. They get the groceries out, the eggs fall to the ground, they crack. The mother berates them. The mother or the parent or the caregiver, just screams holy hell at them. This child at this moment who was doing developmentally what they're supposed to do is now told, don't take the initiative anymore. It now has a sense of guilt attached to any attempt they're going to make to taking the initiative. This carries on into adulthood. So they have this sense of learned helplessness, this sense that they can't go out there and explore the world, try new things, start new businesses, speak their mind, because so early on in life, any initiative that they showed was really just ridiculed or disciplined or punished. Keep that in mind, what you do to your children. And like I said, Bloom 7 Steps of Personal Transformation, available on Amazon.com or my website, drrosemoulton.com. I talk about this more extensively, and I encourage you all, if you go to my website and join my mailing list, you can get the first chapter for free, which talks about that first step that I had there, where we talk about allowing children to be children, allowing everyone to not just be children, but have their own true personality and identity. The last step here is exposing your children to prolonged toxic adult relationships. That can be relationships that you're in where there's verbal abuse, physical abuse, lack of connection, where you're distant, isolative, all of those different things. That's one of the worst things you can do for a child, because understand the relationships that your children are seeing you're in, be it your spouse, your significant other, boyfriend, girlfriend, even the relationships you're having with your families. Understand that's going to become that child's norm. I don't care how dysfunctional it is. Anything you guys have heard me say before, we do enough of becomes our norm. And so they learn to find comfort in chaos. And you fast forward 20 years and you find them repeating that same pattern, and you're seeing your grandchildren in those states that you don't want your grandchildren in. Know where it began. And it probably didn't even begin with you. It probably began with your parents and their parents, because no one along the line had the forethought of or the courage to break these cycles, to break these mindsets, to stop being a cognitive misers and challenge just the mindset and these common practices that are contrary to our healthy emotional well-being. So guys, I hope these 5 steps help you or help someone that you know, please share them. This video will be available on YouTube as well. It'll be available on Facebook Live. Join my mailing list by going to my website, drrosemoulton.com, and you can get all the information there, and you can get my first chapter of Bloom 7 Steps of Personal Transformation for free. And hopefully I get to see you guys all at my transformation retreat I'm hosting next March in Sedona. So take these steps to heart. Think about it. If you have more questions or comments, I would love to hear your commentary. Please leave it on this video. But we all deserve it. Not just us, but our children and the future children and the future children and the future grandchildren and generations to come. We all and they all deserve to live their life in full bloom. But it starts with us. Starts with us, guys. Have a great day, and thank you once again for joining me this morning. Bye-bye.